here,
Which one?
I told Jen, I said, no, that was Ollie.
Distinguished.
Yeah, the one that sits on the end, you know.
Mary Ellen to come back.
So you can consider yourself a
Yes, we got-
distinguished gentleman.
6, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we're 6. We got a quorum. Okay, don't touch.
Hey there,
Hi.
how are you?
Excuse me. So you don't have to touch the talk on the mute button. She's just gonna, the mics will just be live, so try not to hit them.
I have to call the work session to order. Calling Commissioner Creekmore for the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you to ask for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. We ask that you will be in our midst and for our blessings to help us engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to continue to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of our community. Fill us with your grace to make appropriate decisions that will affect our city. Help us to be able to review the matters at hand in a reasonable and thoughtful way, and let us continue to give our thanks for the many blessings that you have bestowed upon us. So guide us each one of us so that we can make fruitful contributions as we work for the city to accomplish our goals this day. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Ms. Pittenger, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Bauer,
Present.
Commissioner Creekmore,
Here.
Commissioner Eberwein,
Here.
Commissioner Edwards, Commissioner Goodman,
Here.
Commissioner Hicks, Chairman Singleton,
Here.
and Commissioner Staler.
Here.
Chairman, you have quorum.
Okay. For staff briefing on the comprehensive plan, Ms. Pittenger, will you give us an overview?
Yes, sir. So our comprehensive planning manager, Keith Kennedy, is going to give us an overview of where we are with the comprehensive plan update. He's going to be supplemented with some of our department heads.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for the opportunity to keep you informed in the loop as we make progress on this comprehensive plan update. We do have a fair amount of material, information to share with you all today. It may be best if we hold questions till the end. As Meg mentioned, we'll be hearing from a number of city staff as we dig into the breadth of this topic and make the case for moving forward into the adoption or the last stages of the process. So we'll actually start out from the beginning in some ways, remind ourselves of the charge that we have to update this comprehensive plan, look at the state code requirements and just for the basic issues of what we've set out to do. We want to spend a little bit of time just following up on the conversation at the joint session with City Council on May 1st. We have made a couple of recommendations that we want you all to be aware of and be able to locate those in the document. And then we'll get back on track and talk specifically about this plan. Why is it important right now? What have we been able to build on with the traditions in 2035? And what do we think is needed now? Why is this plan urgent now? What will we be addressing going forward? And finally, what's it all about, the implementation part? We'll touch again on that and being able to move forward into that part of the process and identify some dates going forward as well. So again, the state code does a good job of laying out sort of why Suffolk and all cities, counties, and towns undertake these projects. Again, about every 5 years. I reminded myself this week that the plan we're operating under now was adopted in April 2015, so 9+ years. So it's time, right? Things have changed since that date. These documents, by design, are fairly general, and they really focus our energy around a coordinated guide for development, particularly the physical development of the community. And while the The topics, the values are fairly broad. It all really kind of gets back to that development strategy. And how do we blend these different values and balance these different needs going forward? And again, this is something that we've been able to build on. I think I shared that with you all in the council. I was surprised at just how consistently this community has identified this set of core values going forward. And of course, we asked that question at the beginning of the process: are we on track? Are these the things that are important to the community that we need to continue to focus on? Quality of place, a sense of place. Transportation has always been a challenge for Suffolk as it grows. Looking at economic development opportunities as well, and again, planning long-term to make sure those are available to us. Housing in particular, I think in the current market was a frequent topic, particularly in the area of affordability. Suffolk has a lot going for it in terms of its natural environment, the historical assets, the cultural assets. So again, that's a major factor in thinking about this strategy. The relationship between growth and services and facilities, again, a major topic, and one of the reasons we want to spend a little bit of time on that today with our department heads, making sure we preserve its agricultural history that Suffolk has had from the beginning. And finally, just recognizing that we're a big city, but we're also part of a big region. And we need to understand how that affects us and the opportunities that it creates, as well as some of the challenges. So let's talk a little bit about where we left off on May 1st with the joint session with City Council. We identified 4 areas at a staff level that we felt like we heard pretty strongly that we should consider making some revisions to the plan. So I want to touch on those in the next couple of slides, identify those for you. I'm going to provide the detail for you, but also I want to identify the page number. It's a big document. I want you to be able to find that for yourself in the coming weeks and months as we bring this plan forward for adoption. So the growth area boundary was the first one. And so I want to identify a little bit of the history here as well. Clearly, we have heard that the size of the growth area that we're contemplating for the city of Suffolk is large, and maybe some ways too large or out of sync with what has been done in previous plans. So here's the document that we took public back in February with the 5 different options you all will remember, almost a menu of areas that we thought were good locations for expanding the growth boundary and to receive some feedback on those. In May, we had pared that down. This is the plan that we discussed at the joint work session, down to 3 areas that were still on the table or recommended at a staff level, but we were hearing some concerns, particularly about I'll call the 460 corridor going out to the Olive White County line. So you'll find under the current draft that that's a recommendation. That's a change that we have made in the recommendation that you're looking at. And you'll see that in the document on the page where the future land use plan and growth area boundary is shown. I want to give you just a couple of numbers here to kind of put this into perspective. This is a 5,900 acre expansion of the growth area. That's what we're currently proposing. The growth area expansion in 2015, the last time we did this, was 2,300 acres. Okay, so roughly twice what we're recommending now. The initial growth area boundary, this is back in 2006, was 5,600 acres. So again, we're down in that, roughly in that area that was considered. Again, every update's a little bit different. We believe we have some development opportunities now or some challenges that we didn't have earlier, and we'll talk about those. But I wanted to share those figures with you in this revision since that discussion back in May. So a growth area boundary change is recommended by staff. One of the other things that we heard had to do with the historic villages in Suffolk. And I'm sensing we've got a lot of support for the importance of these areas and also the importance of updating those plans. So we've got that in the plan, and we're carrying that forward. One of the things we heard, particularly with respect to the villages on the Suffolk Peninsula area up in northern Suffolk, was concern about preserving what many people think of as traditional neighborhood focused commercial, the smaller types of commercial development, which were very common in the villages when they originally developed. The scale of commercial development now is quite a bit bigger than that. More traffic, more impact on surrounding uses. So one of the things that we heard was we want to make sure that when we update these plans, we consider that problem, that challenge that these areas face. So we've added this language, and I've got the page number here to show you, to go back and look at the detail. But we want to make sure that we're sending out the message that we think this is an important issue, particularly for some of the villages, and that will be part of the scope of what we look at when we update those plans. Does that make sense? So maybe not true in the same way for all of the villages, but certainly true for many of them, if not most. So that's a change that we recommended. Again, I think we've got good support for this notion of a master transportation plan. I think there's an agreement that it's kind of a new day with traffic congestion in Suffolk, increased port traffic, and frankly, the competition for funding to solve these problems. So we went back in the document and provided additional detail, essentially, for that recommendation. The recommendation was there in May. It's still there now. We've spelled out in a little more detail what we think that will look like and why we think it's important. So that was a change. And finally, we heard quite a bit about employment centers. This is the purple color on the future land use map. As you all recall, we've taken a different approach to the land use map. We show more districts. We heard that, wow, it looks like there's a lot of purple on this map. How's that possible? You know, what's really on the map? Why is that so important? So we want to spend a little time this afternoon digging into that category, partly because it really is important that we do that and everyone is clear on what we're recommending. So I want to look at the map a little bit more detail with you all today, explain what you're seeing. Kevin Hughes is going to talk a little bit about this category of land use, recent development trends, and then finally I'll wrap up that conversation with some language that we're recommending that we change based on that conversation. So let's take a look at the land use map. And of course, all of this land use, this employment center, is in the growth area. So I've broken it down so we can get a little bit better scale of what we're looking at. This is the northern growth area, and what you're seeing, on this is one area essentially on the map, and that's primarily the Northgate Commerce Park. You know, the real drivers behind this land use category is existing zoning and existing land use, particularly for the area that's already developed in the growth area. So this is primarily the Northgate Commerce Park. When you look at the central growth area, I'm going to start you kind of at the top right and just kind of walk around clockwise to identify kind of what you're looking at. And we'll talk some more about these areas when Kevin gets up. So up in the upper right-hand corner, you may be familiar with the Wilroy Road Industrial Park. That's one of the big chunks of purple that you see up there. Coming back around, you'll see the SIPSA Regional Landfill. And the area, as you're coming in on 58, the auto junkyards and the auto park places, of course, that's M1, M2 zoning. As you come down again to the south and now back to the west, you'll see the Carolina Road, Dill Road industrial area, again, currently zoned for that use. And then, of course, you also see the the Suffolk Executive Airport, a very large property with that zoning in place there. So then, again, coming up around the corner, and at the 58 corridor, of course, you're looking at the Center Point Commerce Park. Again, largely built out. We'll talk a little bit more about how that happened and the opportunities that are still there. And then again, going up again, you're going to see, again, within the existing growth area boundary, the Port 460 Logistics Center, already zoned for that use and currently under development. So actually, when you look at the numbers, 86% of what's purple on this map is already zoned and developed in these uses. So what's remaining is the 460 corridor, about 14%, which we're proposing as part of the future land use plan. Okay, so I wanted to kind of set that in perspective. It does look quite different from the existing future land use plan because we didn't actually call that use out in that plan. Now we think it's important to do that, and so this map reflects that. So I want to pause there, and hopefully that's a good background explanation for you all. And then Kevin's going to come up and talk a little bit about this land use in the city and what's been changing, frankly, over the last several years going forward. All right, Kevin?
Thank you, Keith. Good afternoon. So as part I wanted to share with you today is a couple of things to bring forward. One is an evolution of industrial development in the city of Suffolk, as well as what's being recommended in the comp plan to draw on and hopefully advance some thoughts for a more diverse product base, a more diverse employment base, and some recommendations that are being made in this comprehensive plan. And then I'll show some aerials that demonstrate what Keith was also talking about the activity that we've seen and the development that's occurred. And so on the one map saying, is this all new versus what we currently have in place? And you'll see there's been a lot of progress related to development. So on your screen is Wilroy Industrial Park. I want to touch on kind of the evolution of industrial jobs in the city. Outside of Planters and Lipton, Wilroy was really the opportunity for the city and at the time the Industrial Development Authority to plan a master planned industrial park. So previously, if you think about where Planters is and where some of our other peanut processing programs are, or Lipton, they're not necessarily set in a good land use makeup, right? They sit on top of and adjacent to residential, and everybody's kind of congested in together. So Wilroy really was the opportunity to go out and master plan a park that was led with city and authority efforts. And it started around the 80s, I believe. The first success was felt, I think, with Pepsi, had a facility out there. And then not too long after it was what's known as Massimo Zanetti, I believe was Hills Brothers at the time. And it's been a very successful park. It has a good mix of food and beverage, in distribution, and a few suppliers in that world, small business and large business. And again, this was an effort led at the local level with a lot of local funding in order to advance roads and develop parks and properties and things of that nature. And so that's one that's been very successful and has sold out going from the 90s into about the early 2000s. And so that next evolution that really took shape was going into the 2010s and forward, where private investing groups were looking to work within land use programs like our comprehensive plan and set up master plans versus just finding a site here or there. And so that began to take shape. We'll go out onto the 58 corridor here. I've highlighted 3 privately held industrial parks. Out in red is the Virginia Commerce Center off Kenyon Road. Yellow is Centerpoint, now known as Virginia Port Logistics. And then in orange is Westport. And so this photo is from 2016. This was a scenario that, this is a photo of 2016, but it was many years in the making in order to rezone the property, plan for future transportation, water, and sewer programs in order to fuel and provide services to the parks and the future employers. And so this is part of that evolution where the city wasn't necessarily using our funding to drive the industrial park or be the developer, where private dollars came in, found the site, and began to do the master planning and act as the developer. It's the business that they operate and own in. And it wasn't necessarily moving at the rate that folks had hoped to be on their pro formas, but a lot of that began to change. And a lot of that changed with the supply chain shortage, the Port of Virginia's continued investment, and then the 58 road widening project. All those things coming together over time began to create a more attractive opportunity and narrative for folks to realize and see that this was a site that they could be successful at. And so fast forward to 2024, and you can see that the photo and the story is much different. And so from what went from about 4 buildings to almost 10 or so. And so starting at the red up at Virginia Commerce Center, NFI is still the tenant in that building up against the abandoned rail track near Indian Trail. They're currently under construction on a speculative building just opposite NFI, leaving one smaller track available, kind of the tail end of that triangle. Jumping into the yellow at Virginia Port Logistics, you can see the Navy Exchange Command is in there, Alpha Kenyon, Dart Logistics, NFI has their second building, Lowe's is our latest tenant, that's at the top left, and then Amazon has another facility in there. Working your way towards 58, you'll see GXO, Emser, Freon, Ace, and Massimo Zanetti. Now as a finished goods warehouse, after they complete in Wilroy, they're able to put their finished goods in this warehouse as well. And so surprisingly, something that was some 10 plus years in the making now has reached its really completion point. There is one site just north of Lowe's that was recently sold to another party that will need to advance development. But other than that, you'll see that park has completed. South of it at Westport, they have their first tenant that they'll be opening about this fall, MSI, and then you may be able to just make out the color brown off of the MSI letters where they are starting some pad work for a large structure, and that would complete their development as well. And so in about 8-10 years' time, you'll see these 3 parks have taken shape and have almost reached completion here on the 58 corridor. Again, these are all privately done developments, at least on site, that have taken shape and completed. And want to share one more story for you. Keith talked about Northgate Commerce Park. So this takes you up to Shoulders Hill and Nansen Parkway. This is kind of a hybrid model. So the city, the EDA, and the property owner at the time worked together to create a public-private partnership, essentially, where we were able to use some local funding to build a road and a pump station, and in return, we received some land in order to control a few deals that started. And the first deal that was done was Wanchi's Fish Company and their cold storage unit, and those were deals that the Economic Development Authority orchestrated, and they were our first tenant. And for quite some time, you can see on the left-hand side, they were the sole tenant. We saw a little bit of success with some small logistics buildings and some small flex buildings, but you can see it was fairly slow out there for the most part. When Nansman Parkway and Portsmouth Boulevard, working with the city of Chesapeake, we combined efforts there, really a regional win. We were able to jointly, between the city of Chesapeake and Suffolk, expand that roadway from 664 past this industrial park. Folks started to take a little different look at the park. The Amazon project to the south of the photo in 2024 really was the turning moment to where others began to look, and although the soils have issues and it adds extra expense, they saw that that group going in there really changed the world. And so 2024 You can see the other structures that have come in here. There's two other sites it's tough to make out on this photo that are actively under construction here as well. There are two sites that are left undeveloped and aren't currently under development. One is owned by Wanchese, and the other one's owned by Hampton Roads Moving and Storage existing tenants. And so the Northgate Commerce Park is also complete and sold out as well. So going back to Keith's thoughts about, or information about, man, this is a lot of purple, can we handle all this? The reality is most of it's already built out, if not the vast majority of it. And so it's representing some historical uses in there, or will be historical uses. Some things to bring to light that I think are important, that are recommendations in the current draft plan, is we've made some recommendations that we think it may make sense for the city or EDA or powers that be to participate more in future developments, i.e. controlling property within a park. Is there an opportunity like Northgate to where we can work along with a property owner to control and do some deals that we would rather do versus maybe what's driving them? And a good example I'll give you in Northgate Commerce Park, there's two roads in it. You've got Northgate Commerce Parkway and Industrial Drive. So to the right, let's see if I can figure this thing out. There we go. So in this area, hold on. This site. So can you see that in red? Is that coming up? So that's a 37-acre tract in Northgate Commerce Park that the EDA held on for quite some time. And we told a lot of folks, no, we really wanted to see something interesting go in there. As the park evolved, what came to fruition was an opportunity to introduce a different user in there. And so what has began in that park, and the last site that we got to make the decision on, was VDOT is going to put their operations facility that's currently on Main Street at that site, and then our Suffolk Public Works Center that's currently in front of Lone Star Lakes will relocate there for their Zone C headquarters. And so having the ability to control some of those decisions is something that I can promise you a private developer would not do. And what the thought was from a community perspective is, one, that'll free up a site on Main Street that's probably it's not its highest and best use on Main Street. It's not convenient currently for VDOT, who services from the Eastern Shore to Petersburg, to be on Main Street. Off of 664 is a very different story, and there's something that they were excited about. Additionally, what the Public Works Zone C project will do is remove what is currently at the entrance of Lone Star Lakes, one of our most pristine parks in the city, and we'll be able to build an interpretive center there and move Zone C to a better location to where they can operate out of and service the northern part of the city. Without the Kings Highway Bridge, it's not a convenient opportunity for them. So taking that into context, you'll see recommendations in the draft plan that talk about us maybe entering into more ownership type opportunities. Can we take down 1,000 acres? Probably not. There's too many competing priorities. However, it's something that we need to think about if these purple areas, or a new purple area, becomes part of it. Additionally, and I think Keith will hit on this here as soon as I step down, is we do want to think about what happens when these buildings change, right? We used to be the peanut capital of the world. When I first started, we were the modeling and simulation capital of the world, and that's no longer. Logging used to be a massive industry in the city of Suffolk. My point being, we will all see evolutions in our industries. And we know some of these buildings that get built today can be something different in the future. And we want to think about that. And so we've got some new language for consideration that you didn't see before, thinking about this in the context. And part of that context being these buildings that are being built are concrete, wide, open, and do allow some ability to be something different. An office building can really be an office building without tearing it down and doing something different. These do have a little more flexibility in them, not tons, but some, and so we want to think a little bit differently about that as well. And so with that, I think Keith is going to jump back up.
So
hopefully that gives you a sense of sort of how this evolves from a blue color or purple color on a map to something that in the long term generates employment and almost always net tax revenue for the city to pay for services and other things. So that's the thinking behind what we're talking about on 460 West and the expansion of the growth area there. Kevin also mentioned something that we heard at the joint retreat and seen in Suffolk for years is these are purpose-built structures to do a specific thing, and over time it may be appropriate for them to evolve to another use. So we wanted to be clear in the language that we use in the plan that might happen in the future and not be so rigid around what that building had to be used for. So again, we're talking about policy, not a change in zoning, but we've added to the list of permitted secondary uses the compatible adaptive reuse of that structure and provided certain criteria for that. So again, we want to attract these investors to these places, and we want to have them in our community and have the benefits that are associated with it, but we realize there may be a need to change that use going forward. So we've added this language. You'll find this on page 50 in the document, and that's the rationale behind that. You know, let's plan for this being successful, but also down the road, if necessary, evolving into another use. So that kind of concludes that part of our presentation today. You know, what do we hear back on May 1st, and what have we changed, we think, to better address those issues going forward. So all that's in the draft document that you all have in front of you, and that we'll post online tomorrow. So I want to shift a little bit and talk about essentially sort of why now? Why 2045 now? Why do we need to update this plan? What is new? And these are the things that, for me, floated to the top as sort of the most important issues for us to think about. So I want to touch on those very briefly, and then we'll shift gears a little bit and talk about, so what's not new? What have we kind of built on from the current plan? So clearly, it almost goes without saying, community engagement was up much higher than we've probably ever witnessed in terms of this planning process. I think clearly Suffolk has evolved, matured into a city where we have a lot of residents who care very deeply about this community and want to be a part of this process. And I believe the city responded very well to that change, you know, and changed the scope of the process and really expanded the public input effort of this project, and went to great lengths to make sure that we were listening. We were inviting everybody in, recognizing that making everybody happy is pretty close to impossible, but at least hearing what the concerns were in using that information to draft that overall strategy. So again, I'll just kind of touch on some of the things that have been going on over the last couple of years to make sure we did a good job in that area. You know, 4 rounds of community engagement, just some of the numbers of folks that we interacted with during that process. So clearly that's new, and I believe it's a strategy that we'll need to continue to employ going forward. It's kind of a new game, I think, for planning and land use and development in Suffolk. We can expect that kind of engagement and interest, and need to be prepared for it and respond accordingly, and be prepared to take that into account in our planning going forward. So what else is new? And we've talked about this a little bit. Again, the top sort of 3, I think, that everyone recognizes. We continue to grow, you know, as the development opportunities are still out there. We show up on a short list every other week of one of the fastest growing communities, whether it's in the region or in the state, and clearly we're seeing that and expecting that to go forward. We had a once-in-a-generation expansion of the Port of Virginia in the last several years that's drawing on affecting the region, affecting the state, and that's a big driver and an opportunity for us. We had a major change in the market for utility-scale solar as a result of action taken by the Virginia governor that created a market for farmers all over Virginia that wasn't there before. You know, so major change, and I believe we've we've adapted to those going forward. And we've built those in, as we're talking about this afternoon, into a growth area boundary expansion that we think provides these opportunities for us, taking advantage of the job creation opportunities that are out there, finding new ways, continued ways to bolster the city's tax base and pay for the services that are going forward, leverage infrastructure investment, and find a way to elevate the quality of that industrial development. As Kevin mentioned, you want it in your community, but you want to do it in the right way and in the right location. So what's new in this plan? Again, looking at preserving agricultural land, we've done some things in this plan that are not in the current plan. We've got some opportunities, and we're really taking advantage of those changes. We were able to get the input of an Agricultural Advisory Committee. In fact, the recommendations that you see in this plan came from that committee. We'll have a new person coming on board to help carry that forward. And this plan effectively lays out the early work program for moving that forward. That's a significant change going forward. And I've got some of those recommendations here for you. I won't read through these, but again, these came from the Ag Committee, and they are priority recommendations in the 2045 plan. Again, identifying the things that are challenges and identifying a strategy for affecting that change, and working with the committee and the new staff person to make that happen. One of the other things that is new, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, it's been a topic of an earlier work session with you all. We've taken a different approach to land use. We want to create more predictability in terms of particularly these big developments that are coming our way. And that predictability really affects everyone. Council, Planning Commission, city staff, the investors themselves know what we're thinking and where we think that should go, as well as the surrounding property owners. So that's a pretty significant change over what's in the current 2035 plan. A couple of things that I think are not new. I think we're continuing to build on some of the good work that's been done in previous updates of this plan. We recognize, for example, that smart growth is the strategy for us right now in Suffolk. We want to keep that going. We recognize that we're a very unique and diverse city, and we want to protect and preserve the things that are special. And finally, I want to give the department heads a chance to talk about some of the investments that are being made in smart growth going forward. There's a lot of ways to recognize just how diverse Suffolk is, particularly in terms of its development. We put together this slide just to give you one example of how diverse we really are. Of the 430 square miles in Suffolk, if you looked at just the categories in the future land use plan, what would you see? 83% of that area is rural ag, rural conservation, or open space. So clearly, that aspect of Suffolk's diversity is in place even with the future land use plan realized going forward, with about 17% of the area of the city devoted to urban and suburban uses. So we're still that diverse, large city with old neighborhoods, old downtown and villages, growing suburban communities, and a very, very large, surrounded by a very, very large rural community remaining. So again, what are we building on? Are we protecting those things that are special in Suffolk? Talked about the progress on agricultural land preservation, plans to update the village plans in downtown, and we've got a number of priority ordinance amendments that'll help us deal with placemaking types of things primarily going forward. But at this point in the presentation, I want to turn it over to a few of our department heads who know much better than I do how we're investing in smart growth going forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Furlow. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation. So the comp plan really helps guide us in our decision-making process as we go through what our capital improvements look like. So you can see up there, there's a picture of the 3 recreation centers that were built over the last 15 years. And 2 of those rec centers were built in the growth areas. We also did a lot of major improvements to the 2 regional parks that are located in the 2 growth areas, Bennett's Creek and Lake Mead. If you think about what Lake Mead looked like when I first started with the city, it was barely a park. It was a playground and a tennis center at that time. Since that time, we've added a couple miles of nature trails, a dog park, a skate park. Now it's truly a regional park, and it's a big attraction. And we've added similar amenities to Bennett's Creek Park in the northern growth area too. We've also built 6.3 miles of the Suffolk Seaboard Coastline Trail, and we've got another 6.3 miles under design currently, and about 6 miles yet to build after those 6.3 are fully built out. If you think about the Suffolk Seaboard Coastline Trail, that's not only a trail that's going to connect downtown Suffolk with the Virginia Beach oceanfront, it also connects the 2 growth areas, the downtown and the northern growth area. We've got a lot of projects on the horizon. As Kevin mentioned earlier, the Lone Star Lakes Interpretive Center, Nansen River Boat Ramp, we've got the Driver Sports Complex, and recreation centers in the downtown area, in the Holy Neck area, and an aquatic facility. So we're really excited about these projects and looking forward to getting those completed. And I'm going to turn this back over to Kevin again now.
So just to kind of round out a couple of initiatives, recreational and non, the comp plan, I think one of the things we want to talk about is that it's comprehensive in nature, of course. And so you will find chapters or information on everything that Mark just talked about as far as needs, wants, and desires, and things that we want to concentrate on, but also things related to public safety in schools additionally. And so the CIP hopes to draw upon that, and so these documents really need to work together and touch as we move forward. And so a couple of photos, active projects from our capital programs, the Downtown Festival Park, a few blocks from here, that'll open next month. Really excited about that. It's a big initiative in the comp plan to talk about the continued revitalization of downtown Suffolk, and we think that this project will help with that. JFK Middle School, also $80 million middle school, which is well underway and will open in a year or so from now, next school season. Central Library just broke ground also, very close to where we're standing. And then up in northern Suffolk, we see an increase in need for medical safety as well. And so this will allow our fire and EMS divisions to be able to respond much quicker to our population in northern Suffolk. And so Fire Station 11 up on Hampton Roads Crossing Parkway is well underway and will provide more services to our citizens as well. So it really becomes this very significant document that does more than just touch on growth, but all the programming that happens in the city of Suffolk, and obviously you guys see the CIP each year as well, and so we wanted to bring this to your attention as well and seeing how these all kind of work and interact with each other.
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon. I would have brought you some pictures of some sewage pump stations to match what Kevin and Gary shown you, but they pretty much look the same. We get excited about that, but I won't do that to you. But what I do want to talk to you about this afternoon is what Keith and Kevin have talked a lot about smart growth, and what does that mean for public utilities, so i.e., in other words, water and sewer. Smart growth really allows us to make the investment not only to maintain the current level of service that the assets that we already have in the ground or above ground in the case of pumping stations and water treatment plants, but also to plan for future development. So smart growth really is about balance for public utilities. So a couple of things. When we talk about smart growth and balancing system improvements, we want to make sure that we build what we need to build and time it so that we don't overbuild, and then that impacts utility rates. So we don't want to have a stranded asset out there. We overbuild the water treatment plant, we overbuild water transmission lines, and then that asset's out there and it's not being used. The other key piece to that, and it's a great example on the second bullet here, and we talk about balancing construction timing, for example, with water quality. We go and we say, for example, we build a larger water transmission line down a major thoroughfare, and we're thinking, development's going to come. Well, what happens with that water is not like wine. It does not get better with age. The disinfectant that we use in the water actually ages, and that's detrimental to the water quality. And we don't want that. So we want to time the expansion of facilities such as a water transmission main to closely ally it with development. Development does drive the system expansion. We have a developer comes in, puts in a subdivision, they put that in, they dedicate that system back over to us. That drives the system expansion because that subdivision is going to require water and sewer assets. So we need to expand water transmission, sewage force main assets, so it all is linked together. Wanted to use a simple illustration. We talk about why development's important to our utility assets. We receive revenue from water and sewer availability charges, and we use that to fund, that assists with improvement funding as well as paying the debt down and assist with assets that are currently in the ground. So for example, if we take an availability charge and we go and we budget this in our annual budget on an ERU basis, and I want to explain what that means. It means an equivalent residential unit. So think of this roughly as a new connection for one home. We can also convert that to commercial development as well. So for example, this upcoming fiscal year and then also the last fiscal year, we budgeted availability charges, which funds, again, the assets that are already in the ground, as well as development on an ERU basis. So we budgeted 550 additional ERUs for the upcoming fiscal year. So just for an example, simple math problem for sewer and water availability charges, you can see, say we only budgeted 100 ERUs versus the 550, you can see the difference there. The difference is almost $5.2 million. So we get that 550, we get developers that come in, assist us with that. It absolutely assists us with maintaining the assets in the ground as well as looking towards the future. But the whole key I want to leave you with is for smart growth, it's that balance. It's putting the assets in the ground at the time they're needed, not getting behind, but then also maintaining the assets that we already have in place. Thank you.
So again, as we continue on with this idea of smart growth and how it relates to our infrastructure, one of the biggest infrastructure pieces that we talk about and hear about quite a bit is our transportation network. What I'll share with you today is a map that's up there that actually is put out by the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization. They do this every couple of years, and they actually go out and they measure congestion all over the region. And you'll see there's just this is afternoon, so certainly afternoon is worse than AM. There's just a little bit of red and yellow scattered throughout the city. Not nearly as bad as to our east, but there's a little bit out there. So you also say, well, how does smart growth come in this? Why aren't we building roads? Well, again, as we start planning for highway projects, we look and say, okay, where's our growth coming? Where do we think the need is going to be there? Also, I'll share with you just about 8 or 10 years ago, the Commonwealth of Virginia started a program there they call Smart Scale. And the idea behind Smart Scale is to build the right project at the right time for the right amount of money to have the right impact. So VDOT used to just hand money out to localities, said you figure out where you need it and spend it. And there's places here real close by that show you massive roads that Suffolk built many years ago that have nowhere near enough traffic to manage them. And we got other places where we need bigger roads and we can't. So Smart Scale has been a good change. So what I'll share with you in this next slide over the last, and again, it's somewhere between a 5 and 10 year process from conception to construction of a road project just because of all the rules that we have to go through. But you'll notice on here there's a number of green dots on this map. And what they are actually active CIP construction projects that are underway at this moment. And you'll notice every one of those fall just about on top of one of those spots that we are having congestion. That, folks, I'm glad to tell you, is not blind luck. That's good planning. That's taking this plan that we've had for a number of years and using it as we plan forward to where we've tried to get our funding. So again, one of the key things to take out of Smart Scale in the funding aspect, and Smart Scale is a very important part to us today, The most important aspect of getting a project to score well in smart scale and obtain funding in our area is congestion. We'd love to say we build before we need it and it's there when it comes, but the reality is, the way the system is and the way it always has worked, it probably will continue to work, there's got to be a need in order to justify a road. So again, we are using these documents as we move forward. We are planning into the future. Sometimes it doesn't seem that we are, but we are planning into the future. And again, I just share with this is a good example that 5 to 10 years ago, we actually were using the plan and moving forward.
All right, so again, our thinking this afternoon was to step back and give you that bigger picture, how all of these things relate to each other. Clearly, the future land use plan and the growth area plan makes things happen, and that level of coordination with infrastructure services is there, and a big part of what we're recommending in that collaboration with other city staff is a big part of bringing these recommendations forward to you. So when we step back and look at the 2035 plan, and we build on what we've been doing, particularly in terms of infrastructure investment and coordinating land use and investment going forward. Clearly that's there, but we also recognize that some things have changed. We need to respond to the opportunities that are out there for us going forward, and we think we've done that as well. One of the other things that this plan allows us to do is to get going on some immediate actions that we recommend, and I've discussed with you all before. Those are ordinance amendments, a number of detailed plans and studies that we think we need to get going on. They're recommended in this document as well, along with some direction on how to get there and who needs to work on it. So that concludes my comments this afternoon. I want to leave you with a couple of next steps, things that we're working towards going forward. As I mentioned, the document that you have in front of you, the June 19 draft, will be posted online tomorrow. We are working towards preparing for a Planning Commission public hearing for your July 16 meeting. We're scheduled to brief City Council, again, in an update, much like what we shared with you all today, on July 17th, in targeting August 21st as a date for City Council public hearing. So that's our presentation. I realize a lot of information in one sitting, but again, a lot of good work, I think, over the last couple of years, actually, and at an important time, I think, for Suffolk moving forward. So, Mr. Chairman, that's my presentation. I'd be happy to entertain any questions or comments.
Okay, stay where you're at. I'm going to start on my left. Any questions for Commissioner Creekmore?
No, I don't have any questions, but I do appreciate Keith for making the changes that I think came out of some of the discussion that we had with the City Council and also Planning Commission, and particularly in the areas of the villages and also transportation that we've already talked about. I won't take any more time because we've already talked about it, but it's refreshing that some of these changes have been recognized and are in the will be in the document. Thank you.
Is everyone?
I don't have any questions. Just one quick question. We've referenced, and as you know, and I know, the traffic has been a big blockhead for all of us and the committee, et cetera. As far as it being now a recommendation, I presume, that we have a traffic study that would be a part of the comp plan. Do you have any sort of idea on any sort of timeline for really kicking that off and moving that forward?
About as far as we go, and it's actually a chapter that's devoted to these recommendations, is to put it in a time frame, a category, and this is one of the ones that's in that sooner rather than later category. So by being a comprehensive plan, you cover a lot of topics. But this is also an opportunity to say, well, what should come first? And so we make some hard choices or recommendations as staff on what should go first, and this is one of those.
Other than that, Keith, I'd like to thank you for the hard, diligent work that you've spent on this and the other city staffers as well. I know we probably don't agree on everything, and like you mentioned earlier, with close to 100,000 citizens in the community now, you're not going to get 100% approval. But I think with the meetings and the listening to the citizens in these meetings that were held, I think it has had an impact on what will ultimately end up as a final product. And I thank you for your leadership in that.
Thank you. Ms. Powell?
I also wanted to thank you for all your hard work, Keith. This is a well put together document. I was excited to hear about the revisiting the preservation of the villages. I think they're such a unique and treasured part of Suffolk. I have family and friends that live in Holland, Eclipse, and I think it's great that we're making that a priority. Curious about, I had two questions. The agricultural specialist, I knew about the advisory committee, but the agricultural specialist position, is that going to be a city employee that's part of the planning department, or is that more of a role like planning commissioner kind of thing?
It's not in the planning department. I can guarantee you that. And then we can definitely provide you more information, the job description and who that person reports to.
Yeah, so that position will be in the Economic Development Department. And it is going to be a city staff person that, will be charged with, having that, be that liaison and promoting agriculture. And we'll work obviously, with the Agriculture Advisory Committee and, with the Planning Department. But that will be actually in the Economic Development Department. Kind of makes sense. It's a large economic driver.
Perfect. Well, I think that's going to be a great addition. So I look forward to hearing more about that in the future. Thank you.
I too would like to thank you and for all the efforts you put in this document. At the City Council work session that I mentioned before, there was more input on this than all the CIPs and all the comp plans previously. I've been on the commission for a few years now, and we've gone through this, but this time we've gone through it with a fine-tooth comb, and we've looked at opportunities to move the city forward. I see Commissioner Goodman, you have any questions?
No.
Okay. I see a few faces of the public. Does anyone in the public like to make any comments? Come up, please. You've got a short time.
Ryan, 119 Suffolk Meadows Boulevard in Suffolk. I sincerely appreciate, the opportunity today and every opportunity we've had to be part of this process. I think the recommendations laid out over a period of time are great and gives everybody a chance to actually soak it in a little bit at a time. I know when it originally came out, the plan, it's very overwhelming. I mean, I got through about a quarter of it, and I was like, I couldn't really fathom how much we were doing at one time. So I think that scares a lot of people when you put that much information out without taking the time to review it. It's just overwhelming. That was my first thought. I think the transportation part of it is significant. We need to have a transportation plan in both looking at these employment center areas, not just the existing roads, but we need to do like a what-if analysis. So by that I mean when we had an accident on 58 and Godwin at the same time, the whole city sets shut down pretty much. So what if there was a hurricane or some natural disaster, and we got goods from the port? Because coming from a transportation logistics background, I know that the state and the port will want to get all those goods out of there as quickly as possible. And a lot of those trains come right through our city. So we're not only looking at the roads, but from a transportation perspective, how do the railroads and the rail lines impact that also? And if there was a natural disaster, all those people from Hampton Roads, I don't say all of them, but a significant part are going to be heading west, and with the bottlenecks we have right now, I think that transportation plan is just enormous in terms of determining what growth we actually do approve and plan for. But I think, with all this, we do need to look at what if, and not just everybody's going to go down 58 or 664, because living off of Nansemond Parkway, I can tell you that doesn't happen. Between Bridge Road and Nansemond Parkway, and John, as well as I do, living in the area, and some of the others, that a lot of that traffic avoids 58 because of what if. What if I go down 58 and I got this load and there's an accident? I'll just go down Bridge Road, or I'll just go down Nansemond Parkway. They do it today. And I don't know that we always look at those things. So I think the transportation part is significant. The villages, as you said, I think is very, very significant from a historical perspective. And as we set a legacy moving forward, we really need to concern ourselves with the villages. And it's not an area that I thought about before the plan came out, to be honest with you. We're doing a lot. Our group, Citizens Voice, is doing a lot with Hobson right now. And we've got a big event there tomorrow that we're attending. We listen to people. We try to support them wherever we can. So, from a group's perspective, I think all those things are great. And as you said, sir, we're never going to agree on everything. But as long as we feel that we're part of the process, as citizens and residents of Suffolk, I think we're that much further along the path than we were before. So, again, we thank you. I thank you personally, and I just hope we can all continue this conversation as we move forward. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Any more public? Okay. Oh, I didn't see you back there.
Behind the podium. Good afternoon. Really, I just have two questions, but I thank you for the opportunity. One, Keith, is this available anywhere that we can see it to be able to study it a little closer to the new updated plan?
It goes on tomorrow.
On tomorrow, okay. Because the one thing I didn't see in it, and I watched the combined group, was an effort to change some of the zoning classifications for workforce housing, and I don't know if that was done or not, so I want to compare the two to see. Because I heard several, Roger Fawcett, the mayor, and even a few of you talk about, especially with all these work zones, where are the folks going to live? I mean, that's been a big thing from the very beginning with this, has been you want to have all these work areas, folks have a right to live in the city that they work in close proximity to where they work. And some of the zoning categories that are set up right now, I know down 460, those folks that would be working in those areas as shown today in the warehouses and things, they won't be able to afford to live across the street from where they work. And I think that's a big thing that Suffolk needs to look at, that teachers, warehouse workers, policemen, they have a good, decent, affordable housing within the area where they work and not leaving and going to other cities to live. So that's one thing I'd like to be able to examine a little closer now when it goes online tomorrow. Other than that, I know there is no perfect plan, and never will be, but I think it's a pretty good plan. I know there's been a lot of work that's gone into it, so I thank everybody for all their hard work.
Thank you, sir. And before I adjourn this work session, I'd like to thank the department heads for your comments also. And this meeting stands adjourned.